Okay, we're gonna get this video going with a hot take. The Russo brothers are only good directors when they are supervised by more talented individuals. Welcome to Collinwood, You, Me, and Dupree, The Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, Endgame, Cherry, The Gray Man, The Electric State. Weird how their Marvel movies were watchable, but everything else they've done is mid at best. And the same goes for their television endeavors. Tell me I'm wrong. I'm not, but go ahead and do it anyway, and we'll see if that makes their next movie any better. Oh, and the secret word is Starship.
Here's my theory on movies.
Do you want me to tell you?
Papa! You lose!
Oh, hi there. My name is Prostetnik Vogon Jeffs, and in this video I'm talking about a movie that had every advantage, every head start. A movie that, on paper, couldn't be anything other than a massive success. An all-star cast of actors, a pair of directors responsible for some of the most successful movies of the past decade, a pair of writers with a pretty respectable track record, an intriguing concept derived from a highly acclaimed graphic novel, and a budget of over $320 million. $320 million! And that's the reported budget. Who knows if that's accurate? I mean, they don't usually err on the side of recklessness when it comes to disclosing film finances. Usually the numbers are downplayed, if anything. In this video, I'm talking about the 2025 sci-fi fantasy flustercluck, The Electric State. Unlike this dumpster fire of a movie, I'm going to do my best to not waste any of your time. Let's get the recap out of the way, and then we'll all meet back here for biscuits, beer, and a severe berating. Here we go. It's 1990, and we're introduced to Chris and Michelle Green. Not their parents, though. F them. I mean, they're there, right there in the background, but they play no role in the story. Instead, we get a brother and sister who act like...
Your brain is the single most annoying thing in my life. It's also the most amazing.
Listen, I'm sure there are siblings out there who are super tight. Maybe even siblings who act like this, but it just feels awkward. Chris is taking a test to get into university or something like that. He's super smart, smarter than Einstein. We are off to a great start. Man, you know, everyone complains about the coming AI apocalypse. Even I've made jokes about how some films feel like they've been written by AI. But I think this is the first movie where I've been like, you know what? Bring it on. I can't wait for the day when AI can write something better than this horse shit.
Watch where you're going, son.
I will not. Well, Chris doesn't know if he wants to go to university, being so young and all, but Michelle convinces him that he needs to because
You could change the world.
Super intelligent young kid destined to change the world? That sounds like a cliche to me. Let's bring it up. Bring up the cliche counter. And now it's time for the world building. We're introduced to Cosmo, a cartoon robot that Chris and Michelle grew up watching. His show is cancelled because the world is embroiled in a war with robots. Journalist Madeline Vance interviews holy shit, that's Holly Hunter. Stanley Tucci's Ethan Skate is, oh god. Okay, hold on. I just want to address this real quick. Names in movies. Sometimes there is meaning in the name of a character. It can be overt, like Castor or Pollux Troy from Face Off, Cruella de Vil from 101 Dalmatians, or every single Bond girl. Or it can be subtle, like Skinner from Ratatouille, Truman from The Truman Show. That's kind of both. Yeah, it's a little on the nose, but it's still kind of subtle. And Koba from the modern Planet of the Apes movies. You don't have to do it. Characters can just have normal names without any hidden meaning. But generally speaking, if you're going to include names with allusions to other things or people or whatever, those things usually have to have something to do with the story or the characters themselves. Ethan Skate is a stupid name. Sorry to all the Ethan Skates out there. Nothing personal. It's just an awkward name.
I hate it. I hate it. I hate it!
But there are indications that some of the names in this movie have meaning behind them. Particularly Chris Pratt's John D. Keats, seemingly named after poet John Keats. And you might be like, that's specious, maybe it's just a coincidence. And you'd be right to say that, except John D. Keats's best friend is named Herm. short for Herman. As in author and poet Herman Melville, maybe? Okay, it's a bit of a stretch. I don't know where I'm going with this. It was just a long-winded way for me to say that all of the character names in this movie are f***ing stupid. Oh, I wasted all of our time with that. All right, sorry. Gonna have to do double time to catch up. We get some half-decent world building, some backstory about how all of this is Walt Disney's fault.
Initially developed by Walt Disney to promote the opening of his theme park.
Which, is honestly pretty hilarious. But basically, it's the beaten-to-death concept of robots gaining sentience and demanding equal rights, and then a war breaks out because humans are terrible or some other cynical bullshit like that. But here's the thing. This movie isn't really about robots. In case you're too thick to pick up on the blatant symbolism throughout the first act, here's Joe Russo himself to make it real clear.
We deserve the right to liberty.
They deserve the right to work for me when I plug them in. And when they don't, it's off to the garbage.
The robots are immigrants. Womp womp. Don't get me wrong, I love subtext. I love depth in the story. But when it rushes to the surface like the political garbage in this movie, well, it's kinda cringe.
Kid Rock threw a party celebrating the defeat of the Robot Equality Coalition.
The robots rebel. A war starts. Ethan develops a neurocaster, which lets people operate drones. Humans win the war. A peace treaty is signed. God, glad to see that there have been zero technological developments since Forrest Gump. Oh, calm down. Take a deep breath. A peace treaty is signed and the robots are banished to the exclusion zone, or the X. After the war, humans continue to use the neurocasters because it allows them to work and play at the same time. Michelle's family gets in a car accident. Her parents and brother don't make it, and she is forced to live with a string of foster families. She winds up living with an irate Jason Alexander. We'll just call him George. She hates school because of technology. She gets a visit from a robot claiming to be her dead brother. She fixes him without the story ever establishing that she's mechanically inclined, and then escapes with him in a car that she doesn't know how to drive.
You wouldn't happen to know how to drive? No, me either.
Yet totally does.
Oh boy.
They set out on an adventure to find the real Chris, who is apparently still alive after being taken by Short Round for some sciencey stuff after the car crash. And now Short Round, their only lead, is hanging out in the exclusion zone. Can we get a travel montage? Ah, we sure can. Along the way, they encounter the dumbest soldier-turned-smuggler of all time, Chris Pratt's John D. Keats.
Is it loaded?
Yes, sir. Yeah, original shells and everything. I throw them in for free.
Well, then I'll take a sip.
Why the f*** would you preload the gun? And his buddy, Herm. Michelle and Robot Chris sneak into John's truck and infiltrate his secret smuggling den. They are discovered, and John tries to discourage them from going into the exclusion zone.
Kid, it's not some spring break hotspot, so why don't you get back in the elevator and forget you ever saw this place. Now.
But before they can be sent on their way, Giancarlo Esposito's Butcher of Schenectady shows up and tries to arrest Michelle while looking for the bot.
Ha! They're bots!
There's a scuffle, and Michelle claps off the lights. And here's me wondering how they haven't developed night vision in this alternate timeline. But Michelle and Chris and John and Herm don't have time to contemplate such things. They need to initiate one of the most lethargic escapes in cinematic history.
Okay, looks like we're going to the X.
We are?
Get in, let's go.
Absolutely zero urgency.
Why do you have so many keys?
Come on.
Should we just run at this point?
And when things are looking bleak as Herm and Chris struggle to fend off an attack from the Butcher, who shows up to save the day? Why, Michelle, in a front-end loader, of course. You know, the girl who didn't know how to drive up until about 5 minutes ago. F*** this movie. The mine shaft that leads from John's smuggling den to the exclusion zone collapses, and the group finds themselves stranded in no man's land, hiding from scavenger bots. Luckily, John has a workshop nearby and a giant mech suit for Herm. Meanwhile, Ethan Skate and his team at Center discover that their neurocaster tech is faltering, racing towards complete failure within days. It turns out that after the car crash, Chris was taken and used by Center to finalize their drone tech. But because of a
tiny, unsecured node in his data matrix,
Chris was able to neurologically escape.
Complete dog shit.
So, Ethan calls up the Butcher and asks him not to kill the bot, but rather return it to Center. And man, you really know the filmmakers screwed up when two amazing actors can't raise the pulse of the movie. Hell, I'm not even convinced they were acting against each other. Blah, 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 Robot Enclave. Blah, 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 Mr. Peanut.
Oh, humans are the same. Selfish and lazy.
Blah, blah. Oh, God. Gee, it just feels wrong. It feels
Weird.
You know, maybe if they had actually shown us the parents, showed how they were terrible, and that pulled Michelle and Chris together, that would make sense. That would make the relationship feel real and not creepy as hell. So, Mr. Peanut and his band of misfit toys decide to help the gang out.
The treaty doesn't allow you to stay. That doesn't mean I can't help you leave.
They know where to find Short Round. Unfortunately, he's in scavenger territory. And even more unfortunately, the Butcher has discovered the Robot Enclave. The team makes their way across the exclusion zone to a dilapidated amusement park. They are immediately surrounded by scavenger bots, but are saved in the nick of time by Dr. Amherst.
Very funny.
Sorry, Short Round. He explains how after the Greens' car crash, Center was alerted to Christopher's exceptional mental stuff. What's that called? The stuff. Intelligence. That's the word. Chris was super smart, and they were all like, ooh. Speaking of God, dear God, please let Millie Bobby Brown retire from acting. Let her finish Stranger Things, I guess, for the fans. But after that, I don't know, maybe she becomes a celebrity judge on America's Got Talent or something. Short Round continues to explain why they needed Chris. Something about brain power, but remember, we're living in a world where artificial intelligence occurred before the 90s. And you know what that means? That's right, it means this movie is retarded. And then Short Round tells everyone that even though it was essential for Center to use Chris's mind, he felt bad about it and wanted Chris to have a family.
He already had a family!
Which is why he created the leak that allowed him to escape. And yes, the R factor just shot through the roof. The Butcher then shows up with a squad of Center drones and a fight breaks out. The first third of the third act, the crisis. The dark moment when all seems lost. Mr. Peanut is beaten into butter by the Butcher, Short Round is taken out by Ethan, Chris is captured, and the team returns to find that the Enclave has been destroyed. The Butcher confronts Ethan about his murderous actions.
Our world is a tire fire floating on an ocean of piss.
What does that have to do with anything?
Christopher gives humanity the chance to leave all that suffering behind.
Oh, okay. Wait a minute. Oh my God. Okay, I might be looking too far into this, but maybe. Come with me for a second. Ethan Skate. He invents the Neurocaster. Elon Musk. Is Ethan Skate a stand-in for Musk?
Debatable.
Or some kind of amalgamation of folks like him and Zuck and Bezos?
Well, this whole box is Pepe Sylvia!
He's rocking a Steve Jobs ensemble throughout the movie.
There is no Pepe Sylvia. The man does not exist, okay? So I decided, buddy, I gotta dig a little deeper.
Ethan is definitely supposed to be some kind of reference to the tech oligarchs.
Carol!
Yeah, I'm getting distracted again.
There is no Carol in HR.
Chris is returned to his human body, and everyone is sad. But then they pull themselves up by their bootstraps and decide to go save him. Short Round's AI copy, fudge, okay, I think I forgot to mention that before. Short Round has an AI version of himself called PC. He tells Michelle that if they unplug Chris from Center, the entire drone system goes offline.
Center's network runs through your brother's brain. Without it, none of the drones will work.
And instead of addressing how that would probably irreversibly traumatize everyone who has become addicted to the Neurocaster tech, instead of addressing how the global economy would most likely collapse due to a shattered workforce, instead of doing any of that, it's...
We could shut them down. Permanently.
Oh, I like the way she thinks.
Okay, I'm done. I just can't. These are the guys that made Infinity War and Endgame. And maybe you're not into comic book movies, that's fine. But the final battle scene between Earth's mightiest and Thanos' army was intense, edge-of-your-seat shit. Well choreographed and well paced. But now we get this. Absolutely nothing interesting or exciting about any of this. It feels slow and boring. And the visual gags fall flat. Okay, that one was pretty good. But other than that, crap. So, big robot battle at center. Mr. Peanut convinces the butcher to switch sides. Michelle uses a neurocaster to enter her brother's mind. Center is retconned as an implicitly evil organization, despite no evidence to support the supposition. And then Chris is like,
I think I need to die.
Back on the battlefield, Herm is injured and dies. Things aren't looking good for the team. But Michelle pulls the plug on her brother. I guess putting him back into the robot wasn't an option. Chris Pratt tries to get emotional. And then, surprise, Herm isn't dead. There's an even smaller version of him inside his broken husk. Michelle gives an awful speech to the world.
I know some of you are a little freaked out about me and my friends and what we did.
And then we get a glimpse of Chris's robot back in action. So yeah, no stakes, horrendous writing. If you can't even sacrifice one of these characters, then the emotional impact of their death scenes is worthless. It's very much on the same level as the "it was all a dream" garbage that some movies are still trying to pull off. It completely kneecaps the entire story, which is over, by the way. The end. Let's talk about the good and the bad of The Electric State. I like the idea of stories that address modern dilemmas like social media addiction. I think it's a theme that is still full of potential. And with discussions of AI being so prevalent over the past few years, there is tons of untapped potential for stories about how this could affect us as a society. The Electric State did none of this, which is bad. But it made me think about how these themes could be applied to movies in the future, which is good? Speaking of good, we've got some decent world building going on. Now, just to reiterate, I said good, not great. I've heard a few other people talk about how they thought the world building in this movie was phenomenal. It wasn't. It was okay. There was too much tell don't show as opposed to the infinitely more rewarding show don't tell. Like a lot of other modern movies, the filmmakers seem to have no confidence in their audience's ability to figure shit out. And before you start yammering about how this is a kid's movie and they need to do that stuff for all the stupid children watching their garbage movie, stop it. It's not a kid's movie. I could be persuaded to think it's a family movie, but even that doesn't sit well with me. It's a dystopian movie that acts as an allegory for immigration and technological addiction. Last time I checked, that's not stuff that preteens are clamoring for. No, it's not a kid's movie. It's a movie that's trying to please everyone despite the blatant political overtones. And we all know how that goes. Oh, shit. I forgot this was supposed to be the good section. Okay. The soundtrack. I love a lot of the songs in this movie. One of the quickest ways to my heart is through Danzig's Mother. The song Mother, not his actual mother. But then you throw in some Flaming Lips and Al Green and Judas Priest. Sold! If you're wondering why the budget for this movie was over the moon, I mean, this is probably one of the main reasons. Clearing the rights for the songs in this movie must have cost a fortune. And now for the bad. The soundtrack. I love a lot of the songs in this movie. It just sucks that none of them feel appropriate to the scenes in which they were placed. The whole thing comes across like the music supervisor was just interested in getting their Spotify playlist on the big screen. There was no consideration for tone or meaning or anything like that. And like character names, you don't always have to have songs that are super on the nose with their lyrics, but everything here just feels wrong. The whole movie feels sonically disjointed and incoherent. What else? Oh yeah, the acting. I expected a bad performance from Millie Bobby Brown. I mean, she's the worst. I f***ing despise actors who can't be bothered to be interested in their own craft. It's like an author that doesn't read, or a fat firefighter. I couldn't blame her as a kid. I mean, she was put into this industry as a child, and maybe it wasn't her passion. That's forgivable. But she's a f***ing adult now, and she apparently wants to stay in the business with the other Hollywood narcissists. Okay, fine. Study your craft. Take it seriously. Learn to act, goddammit. And Chris Pratt, one of his worst performances.
In fact, I would go so far as to say, I'm shocked.
Everyone else in the movie gets a pass. I don't even know if it's possible for Tucci and Esposito to hand in bad performances. They aren't great here. Their talent is clearly wasted with a bland script. But compared to Chris and Millie, they are, at the very least, acceptable. And last but not least, everything else. This movie, taken en masse, is a cinematic sigh. It's antipathy in action. Most of the actors, even the respectable ones, kind of feel like they're phoning it in. The CGI is passable, it's not terrible, but disappointing considering how much the movie depends on it. And disheartening because, like graphics in the video game industry, it feels like the past 5 or so years has seen a regression in quality. Take a look at the live-action Alita from 2019. It's a CGI powerhouse with an equally impressive cast and some similar themes. And it was made for half the cost, $170 million. It's not inflation, guys, it's ineptitude and greed. Also, maybe movies don't need multiple writers and directors. Maybe that doesn't actually help. Okay, let's check in on those review scores. Well, that's interesting. What? These numbers are all over the place. I mean, things could change, sure. The movie has only been out for a short time as of this review, but what a strange split. I've seen Stranger Things, but this is a little unsettling. Not enough for me to change any of my opinions about the movie, but still, a little odd. There are always signs. There are always indications that a movie isn't going to be good. The time of year it gets released, the amount of marketing it gets, the hype of the fan base, those kind of things. There are exceptions, but they tend to prove the rule. In recent years, studios have become less willing to throw everything in the theater. It's a financial risk. The movies that make it to theaters these days are the ones the studios believe can be profitable. So, when Universal gave up during pre-production, deciding not to release this in theaters and handing distribution rights over to Netflix, well, the red flags shot up. And to make matters worse, the Russo brothers, while attending New York Comic-Con in October 2024, more or less admitted that they altered the source material because they didn't understand it. Hey, here's an idea. Don't adapt shit you don't understand. How about that? And I'm not saying that a film adaptation can't divert from the source material. Shrek, Jaws, 12 Angry Men, Starship Troopers. They were all better for deviating. But here's the kicker, here's the rub. If you deviate from the source material, it still needs to be good. And that's something that should be screamed at everyone involved in this bloated, lifeless corpse of a production. Because The Electric State is a terrible movie.
Losing the war until we found him. He was like a gift from God.
My mother was at 3 bottles a day drunk.
You're gonna have to trust me.
Don't tell me about the damn war and gifts from God.
I don't sleep. I don't blink. I blink.
When she tied one on, she was mean. When she was sober, she was worse.
We have a chance to tear their whole sick system down together.